in the call for papers, there was a call for research papers and also for 4-page position papers. And this talk was something I submitted as a position paper, which I had sort of assumed would be presented as a poster, but there's no poster session this year. So I'm giving a brief talk on basically what is not research, but just taking a position, which is not even a position I necessarily agree with, but I think however, it's a position that's worth thinking about, whether you accept or reject it. And this community knows me from my work in AI and AGI, but I've done a bunch of work in bioinformatics and computational biology as well, largely aimed toward understanding how to extend life in various organisms, using machine learning along with other tools. And as a consequence of that, I've met a lot of biologists and dealt with that community a lot. And the attitude of biologists toward the way AI people or try to model the brain is quite different than what people in this room are used to. The brain being viewed as one among many organs, kind of tied up in a whole complex, self-organizing body system. And so I want to talk a little bit about that perspective. And this ties in with the question I've had ever since I met Pei Wang in 1998, which is, what would happen if I put my head on Pei's body and Pei's head on my body? Now, of course, the question isn't restricted to myself and Pei. And of course, it's not just about heads. What would happen if we exchange brains, or say only exchange the cerebral cortex and then kept the other parts of the brain in our own heads, right? But I kind of like that picture better. It's kind of cute, especially Pei. Right? So the point of that whimsical question, of course, is how much of the intelligence actually is in the cortex, which is so much studied? How much is in the brain? I mean, clearly, most of it's in the brain. On the other hand, the brain as an isolated system, how relevant is it to consider the brain as an isolated system instead of as a coupled system with multiple other body systems? And this is not necessarily a big deal for those of us like myself who are not centrally concerned with modeling the brain as a path to AGI. I think it should be a concern for, say, Dalip George, who is not here this afternoon, and for others who are trying to take a brain way to AI. I wonder if it should really be a body way to AI. So first of all, I assume everyone in this room knows that the brain actually is not a backpropagation neural net or any other kind of collection of formal neurons. I mean, vision and audition actually are not laid out into simple hierarchies like this, like Destin or Dalip's network, with hierarchies on nodes on each layer. And I mean, even within the brain, there's a lot more complexity than we acknowledge. I mean, there's a lot of work lately on glia and the roles of glia in memory, which are not incorporated, to my knowledge, in any computer science formal neural net model, although they're barely incorporated in some computational neuroscience neural net models. They don't really know what to do with them, even on the computational neuroscience level. But the whole story of long-term potentiation, increasing and decreasing conductances, I mean, it's not necessarily totally wrong as an approximation, but there's an awful lot of other stuff going on with glia interacting with neurotransmitters. I mean, the picture of hierarchical perception isn't universal, and its lack of universality has implications for cognition. I mean, olfaction is not hierarchical. Olfaction is a highly combinatory neural network. Walter Freeman in neuroscience has been studying strange attractors in olfactory cortex for a long time. I mean, oh, great. Yeah, Gary Lynch has made the argument evolutionarily that the mammalian and human cortex in large part came evolutionarily from the reptile's olfactory bulb, which has combinatory tangled up connections, not the hierarchical connectivity pattern that's more typical of the visual and auditory cortex. I mean, so the hierarchy is there, but the hierarchy isn't everything. One thing it seems to leave out is the strange attractors you get from an asymmetric Hopfield network, which are important for olfaction, and how important are they for cognition? Some people think very. Then, of course, the cortex isn't everything. If you look at how we do action selection, which according to Stan Franklin is the crux of intelligence, that's really the basal ganglia, more so than the cortex. And action planning makes use of the special structure of the cerebellum. Increasingly, it's thought for more abstract action planning as well as motor action planning. So even if the cortex did have the uniform architecture that Ray Kurzweil, Dalip George, and others seem to think it has, even in that case, which I'm not so sure of, that's just the cortex, right? And that's, of course, that's just the brain. I mean, we also have many hormones being exchanged through the brain and the rest of the body all the time, which is what the endocrine system does. And this is critical to emotion, and as Joe Shabak and many others have pointed out, emotion is critical to driving motivation, which is critical to cognition. And there's a feedback. What we think affects hormones. Hormones affect other body systems. They go back and affect the brain again. And this is key to how we focus attention, how we guide our attention, and what we're motivated to do, how we balance goals on different time scales. Are we really eager to do something right now, or can we wait a bit longer? And that kind of thing isn't just the brain. That's the brain plus the endocrine system, therefore plus the body. Now, there's a book called The Second Brain, which details the few million neurons in the gut, which is a separate neuronal network, which if you sever it from the head will keep doing stuff. There's the old notion of a gut feeling, which is partly metaphorical, but you have gastrointestinal hormones, which are primarily identical to the hormones in the brain, because these are neurons down there regulating the gastrointestinal response. And these are all tied in with the endocrine system, which drives our motivation. Now, the liver you can model as a kind of 3D cellular automaton, recognizing patterns and what toxins are there in the blood. And there's a whole story of brain-liver interactions, just chemical signaling going back and forth, which affects the way you think. I mean, there are systematic peculiarities and problems with how people think if they have liver disease, although it's not studied that much. The heart has neurons in it as well. And if you have cardiovascular disease, it affects higher level cognition rather than basic cognition. So there's strange chemical impacts because your heart function affects a level of different neurotransmitters. Now, the immune system is presumably the second most complex system in the body. It's an evolutionary system, kind of more like a genetic algorithm or something than like the brain, but the immune system evolves new antibody classes by natural selection to match onto the antigens that come into the body. And there's a whole study of psychoneuroimmunology, which I ran into when studying the genetics of chronic fatigue syndrome, where again the levels of different neurotransmitters are heavily influenced by the immune system activity, which has to do with stress response, and there's a lot of feedback going on there. If you feel psychologically stressed, it affects your immune system, which then affects neurotransmitter levels, and there's a lot of tangled up connections going on. And this, which I know no one can read, but I can't even read it. This is a subset of a simulation of the body called HumMod, the human model, and there's 5,000 variables and tens of thousands of differential equations, attempting to be an integrated model of every subsystem of the body. Not like modeling the liver as a 3D cellular automaton, but modeling the key variables involved with liver function and the connectivity between all the variables in different parts of the body. That's the wiring diagram of circulatory dynamics in there, and you can split out some specific submodels and just study a few variables at a time. And I wonder, for those of us trying to make little plastic and metal robots like this do something intelligent. I mean, in practice, of course, this guy has Wi-Fi, and the brain is standing on like Amazon compute cloud. What feedback the body gives the brain, if we're lucky, is like the amount of force against some servo motor, right? I mean, he doesn't even have skin at this point, although that technology is in the research lab with different robots. But you wonder if you really are trying to take a biological path to AGI. Is it the brain way to AGI, as Dalip said this morning, or is it the body way to AGI? Certainly, if you're taking the evolutionary path, something like a reptile or a mouse. In the brain-body balance, it's probably more body and less brain than in us, because we have more of these higher order cognitive functions. So if you're trying to start simple and work up, are you sure the best thing is to start with a simple brain rather than a simple body? It's not clear. And it would be an interesting research project to take a real body simulation and connect it to some kind of brain simulation and kind of see how that affects motivation and emotion and control in some kind of simple organism. But unfortunately, I'm way too busy trying to build thinking machines, so I'm not going to do it. But I hope someone will. And that's it.
Questions?
Well, it seems like, and this argument comes up often, that, and we had an instance of it this morning, that it's clear that to get, I believe it's clear that to get the intelligence that really is equal to human intelligence.
You mean equivalent to or
equivalent
equal?
to in the sense of being able to match human intelligent behavior, being able to solve this visualization of a kiss this morning and knowing that you're touching something and so on. You would need to have a body with the same kinds of sensory apparatus, equivalents, in order to answer those questions. But is that what we need for AGI? I think we need a body, in some sense, or at least a sensory network that is rich enough. We have one now that's the World Wide Web and all the telephones in the world, and sensory and all the webcams in the world, and so on and so forth. So maybe we can imagine different kinds of systems where maybe the key requirement is that it's really rich in a sensory way. And if it's going to need to interact with the world, then it better be rich in a sensory motor way also. But when I think about what we did for the desktop computing, we needed a huge number of sensors, and it really wasn't enough. We had all these software sensors, and we did have cameras, but I guess in some sense Kalo didn't have any physical world effectors. The closest thing it could do would probably be to put a bid on, Craigslist or something, asking someone to go pick something up and bring it to a certain room. And there have been people speculating about how computers could, software robots could change the world by basically requesting with Mechanical Turk and Craigslist and things like this to enlist people as effectors. So I don't know, what's your thought about, to turn this into a question, how rich does the sensing and affecting need to be, or maybe this is a question for the whole field, in order for us to consider it sort of artificial general intelligence, or to go back to your brain transplant experiment, do we want to have a set of intelligence mechanisms that could be transferred from one sensory system, sensory motor system, to maybe a radically different sensory motor system, and it could learn with time, presumably. It might have to relive childhood to work well with that new sensory motor system.
Well, I think what you said at the beginning there was right. I think, according to my own intuition, to make general intelligence, I don't agree with Dalip. I don't think you need a body. I think you can make a general intelligence that was trained at mathematical theorem proving and interpreting texts, and I think you could do it. I think that's the hard way, and I think it's easier to give it some body because there's more data, and we understand the human cognitive architecture better than whatever cognitive architecture that would take, and human language was made to be interpreted in the concept of perceiving and acting. So I think it's easiest to give it some kind of body. Now, what detail you need, I don't know. As a researcher, I will be exploring that experimentally and adding more and more sensors as needed. Right now, the actuation of the robots we have is pretty bad. Like they can't pick up very many things. The vision sensors and hearing sensors are okay now. Connect can sense depth. We have some cool sensors. So in my own work right now, the actuation is probably weaker than the sensation. My thought with this human body stuff is more that it may be worth reflecting that what we have in the human case is not an intelligent system in a completely unintelligent and inert container, but rather an intelligent system which is in this body that has a host of other much lesser, but still non-trivially intelligent systems in it, which are also concerned with many of the same goals of surviving in the world and flourishing in the environment. I mean, the immune system has some similar goals. I mean, the endocrine system has similar goals. So we have a complex thinking system coupled with these simpler, complex adaptive systems that are after the same goals. And this seems tied in with our motivational and emotional structure. So I have a feeling that's important for people trying to make human-like AGI systems. I don't think it's necessarily important for making AGI at all. So, but it's something I'll keep in mind. I mean, I would rather work with a robot that had some sort of complex hormonal system and had more adaptive learning going on in different parts of the body, certainly. But that's not on the market at present.
Short, but only a short question, please. Okay. It's coming.
But did you ever think about distinction between the emergence of AGI and the actual operation of the AGI once it has already emerged, so that you could possibly have the necessity of the body for emergence, but then you could cut off the body and it would be running without a body?
It's an interesting question. None of us really knows. I mean, if we actually, the philosophers like to talk about a brain in a vat, and I wonder if you actually put one of our brains in a vat, how quickly we go insane. I mean, it's not really obvious what you would do without a body. And in this experiment, if we really mix my head with Pei's body and vice versa, it's not obvious to me exactly how Ben-like or how Pei-like the two creatures would be initially or after 5 years. I mean, of course, my life history and knowledge is 99+% in my brain, though there may be some imprinting other places. But my motivational system, how much of that is actually tied in with my body, my pace of work, my interest in traveling places, the degree to which I'll pick one thing up and stop doing another thing, all these sorts of things may be body-centered in various ways as much as brain-centered. So how Pei-like would that guy become over time, and how Ben-like would that guy become? I don't know. I don't plan to do the experiment anytime soon either, but I'd be happy to do it on YouTube.
Okay, we have to stop here. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.